The room, with only 7 voices in it, even with only 7 voices in it, erupted into argument. After a few minutes of arguing, a vote was taken, and Mike's plan was dismissed with a vote of 4-3. "So what are you going to do?" Mark asked, looking at Mark. "If things go our way, Rob will be our new sheriff in a week. Maybe he can help us with the local sheriff then." "And what do we do until then?" Paul, who had voted with Mike, asked. "We got plenty to do without having to guard a bunch of MZBs for a week and a half. And what if Rob doesn't win, or he can't help us? We're right back in the same boat then." "What if we make them work for us?" Ralph asked. "They could help tear down the cabins and load them. It probably wouldn't take more than 3 or 4 guys to guard them if we had them work in one area." Everyone seemed to like Ralph's plan, and it was agreed the prisoners would be housed in the barn and fed as long as they worked. With that decided, the plan was to take the women and children back to Silver Hills, where they could be looked after. Then, if any of them wanted to go somewhere else, arrangements would be made, if at all possible. Since they now had several more vehicles from the ranch, there was also room for some other items on the first run. Although not deemed the most important, the remaining weapons and as much of the ammo and reloading equipment as could be carried were taken first. Since the firearms were in the barn where the prisoners would be housed, they had to be moved, and it only made sense to move them once. Almost all of the left-behind weapons were of the hunting variety. However, John had only taken one of the Barrett 50 caliber rifles with him, and the other was still in the armory with some ammo and the reloading equipment. It was the first thing loaded into one of the trucks. Jim was almost salivating on the big rifle, and he made sure it was packed securely. Gunny assigned Mark, Mike, Ralph, and a handful of other men to go back with the convoy. As soon as they arrived home, Mark and Olga would pick 25 men to come back to the ranch to reinforce the guard in case John attacked and to bring the trucks back for the next load. The next evening, Mark would return with 25 to relieve some of the original attack force. They would try to rotate a third of the ranch crew home every day. Even though they'd still have to pull a guard shift at home, at least they would be able to see their families. All of the men would be on 7-day weeks until everything from the ranch was moved. Mark planned to ask any of the men who weren't serving as guards to go down to the ranch and help with the work. The sooner they could get finished, the better for everyone. Gunny and the others stayed behind and started preparing for John's return. Mark hoped it was soon. He knew what a toll waiting would take on the men, but he prayed John would wait at least 2 days, so he'd be there to ensure that the evil leader was dead. As he drove and thought about all that had happened in the last 24 hours, he felt like a hypocrite. He wouldn't consider killing the captives, but couldn't wait to put a bullet in John. It was wrong, he knew, but he couldn't take a chance on the bastard getting away. The only way out, Mark saw, was if John didn't attack until Rob was the sheriff. If that happened, and John surrendered, then he could turn the murderer over to the law and know that justice would be served. It was a long shot, but it was the only way he could see out of this moral dilemma. As his thoughts returned to the liberation of John's captives and all of the useful things they were getting from the ranch, his spirits lifted. The closer they got to home, the happier he was. Before he knew it, they were crossing the Wilson County line. Mark looked at his watch and couldn't believe they were going to be home in time for dinner. It had been a long day, and he envisioned a peaceful evening at home. Then tomorrow, he'd go to church and attend the debate between Rob and Barney. As they topped the last hill before they got to the subdivision, Mark's vision of dinner and time with his family was shattered, and his heart jumped into his throat. There was gunfire coming from the other side of his community. Lots of gunfire. Silver Hills was under attack.